This shouldn't take us too long for 3.3b. What you're going to notice is that when we start getting into the 3.3a through the 3.3e, they're all the same sort of proofs that we've been doing that we started in 3.3a. Every single worksheet, the A through E, will have a proof, but it's going to highlight, or you're going to use something different in the proof when you're solving it. In this specific worksheet, 3.3b, we're going to be dealing with this fact that vertical angles are congruent. It's not going to be the reason why two triangles are congruent, but it's going to be the reason why two angles are congruent. And then what we can do is we can use the things we learned in 3.3a, like side, 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 angle, side, angle, side, angle, 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 side, or HL. We'll be able to use those to prove that two triangles are congruent. With that being said, the only thing else that is different on this worksheet is that there is a problem where a proof is already done for you and it says find the errors. When it says find the errors, you are going to have to figure out what part of the proof is not correct. What part of the proof are you not allowed to do? We're going to do an example like that as well. So since you already have worksheet 3.3a, you flip your worksheet 3.3a over. And it should be worksheet 3.3b. You already wrote down these 7 things that I have over here. You do not have to write them down again. But I thought to myself, since my directions were use the 7 steps in 3.3a, I decided, okay, when I make this proof, I'm going to have the 7 steps over here so that I can reference them as we do the problem. This should match your number 1 on your worksheet. So this is going to be a good review for us. For those of you who have not finished 3.3a's worksheet, this will be a good review for you as we go through these things. Your first statement is blank. And you may be wondering what goes in that statement spot. And we wrote down in 3.3a's notes, start the proof by writing the given statement as your first statement. I know that reason is given. What do I put for that statement? I hope you know what goes there. I think if you just took all this and you write it down word for word for your first statement, then you've done number 1 or the first step correctly. What we need to write down is that segment AE with the little bar on top, segment or side, is congruent to segment DE. And segment CE is congruent to segment BE. Whatever follows that word given is always our first statement in these first 5 kinds of proofs. They don't have to be in a proof, but generally, most of the time, that's how they work. And what is our first reason? Our first reason is always because it's given. So that is literally the first 2 steps. The third step says add congruent marks to your drawing when something is proven congruent. So what does that mean? What that means is this. Since you know that AE is congruent to DE, you go find AE. Here's AE, and it is congruent. Here's the first thing. I'm going to go to the other first thing, and I'm going to add my first congruent thing that is congruent to this thing over here. That was my first piece of information, so I'm going to use 1 congruent mark. And then what do? Since there is a second piece of information that's also congruent, say side CE is congruent to side BE, I go and find side CE and segment BE, and since it's different and it's my second piece of information, I'm going to use 2 marks right there and put 2 marks right there. CE, CE, double, BE, BE, double. So that's step 3. Step 3 was add congruent marks for anything that's proven congruent. If I were to look at this triangle, I have a side and a side, and that is not enough information, but we're going to be able to prove the triangles are congruent by something, and this is on the vertical angles are congruent worksheet. Is there another angle that we could figure out that is the same as another angle in both triangles? Do you see a pair of vertical angles? So the hard part for some of you will be, how do I write this angle? And what you do not want to use is you do not want to use the letter E by itself. You need 3 letters, and the letters have to go from the side to the vertex to the side. Angle AEC. I'm going to write that down over here. Angle AEC, that angle is congruent to another angle. Its vertical angle is over here. They're always the same. It's going to be congruent to another angle, and we need side, vertex, side. If you know the 3 letters, go ahead and say what letters they are to your partner. If you said DEB or BED, those would both be correct. As long as E was the second letter, you're good to go. How do we know that this angle is congruent to this? It's because they're vertical angles. Another key word for vertical angles are 2 angles that are across from each other from 2 lines that intersect. No matter if I close or open, the 2 on the opposite side are always going to be the same size. Vertical angles are congruent. That's the reason these 2 angles are congruent. And then we have to do this in matching order. Triangle CEA, CEA. The way I do this is I go, okay, it's going from a double to the arc to the single. Double to the arc to the single. Then I go to the other triangle and I look for the double to the arc to the single. Do you know what letters they have to be? It has to be in a very specific order. What's the first letter? B. Second letter? It has to be in order, BED. And whatever we fill in here, that's what we're really trying to prove up here. We're trying to prove that these 2 triangles are congruent, and we're doing it step by step. Here's what's given. We know this angle is the same by vertical angles. I know these are congruent by something that you learned last time, and it looks like this. There's a side touching an angle touching a side. Which postulate proves these 2 triangles are congruent? Side, angle, side. That's it. These are the easiest kinds of proofs there are. The last example that I have for you is number 6 on that worksheet. And it says, find the errors. The whole proof is done, and we have to decide whether each thing that they did was correct. So let's go through it. Is this what was given? Is that what was given? Is that what's supposed to be there? That looks right. That looks right. Is the reason given? That looks right. Then what we do is, just like we were doing the problem, if DE is congruent to BE, DE is congruent to BE, that's my first piece of information, and my first piece of information, I would put congruent marks there. DE congruent to BE. AE is my second piece of information, congruent to CE. I would put 2 marks and 2 marks. So far, I haven't found any errors. Let's go to number 2, step 2. Angle E is congruent to angle E. It says angle E is congruent to angle E, and you look over here and you see angle E, but I told you, or at least I hope you know, are we talking about this angle E, or this angle E, or that angle E, or that angle E? Angle E, whenever you have E and it's at the middle of 1, 2 lines, that's not how we write angles. So there's an error the way that person who did this They made an error. I'm going to put a line through this of X. Can't be that. It cannot be angle E is congruent to angle E because you need 3 letters. Just like we talked about before. The reason we need 3 letters is because there's not just one angle. Like I could use angle B because there's only one angle B. But when you're at angle E, we don't know if we're talking about the acute or the obtuse angle. So what 3 letters are going to be vertical angles that are congruent? Let's start off. I'm going to use this one first, DEB. And I bet you can come up with the other 3 letters yourselves. Is congruent to how about angle CEA? So we're putting an X through it. We're putting what it should be.
Is it okay if you put AEC and BED?
AEC and B, yeah, those are the same exact angles. You can write those forward or backwards. Number 3 says triangle AEC is congruent to triangle EBD by side postulate or congruency. And there's a mistake here. Okay? There's 2 mistakes, as a matter of fact. If I was doing AEC, A is this like long pointy end, then to E, then to C, we went like this. Then I would need this side here to match up with that side, which it doesn't. Shouldn't it be like this? BED? That's the first mistake that I see. The other mistake that I see is it can't be side. Some of you might think it's side angle side. But in actuality, do you see how this one is congruent to this? I don't know if this is the same length as this. They told me in the given information that this is the same as this. And I don't know if that's congruent in the other triangle. Side angle side only works if the side angle side in both triangles are the same. And I don't know if the 1 is the same as the 2. Or if the 2 is the same as the 1. So I can't use this. I can't even use side angle side. I don't know right now based off of this given information if they're congruent. So I have an X through this. I have an X through this. I have an X through this. And I'm not even going to put that it could be side angle side. I'm just going to leave it blank. All I really want you to do when you're finding the errors is to put an X over the incorrect information. If you can fix it, that's going to be what we're going to do on future find the error proofs. So I'm going to stop your notes right there.